A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 65.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome to the show. I'm Tom Stewart. I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren. And today's episode is Busting Your Big Crystal Balls. It's all about uncertainty. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Tom. You know, it's, man, we've had some painful show titles, breaking your crystal balls today. It just sounds painful. As a man, I don't want to break anyone's balls.
It was either that or kicking the marbles, but, you know, crystal balls and uncertainty kind of, you know, because uncertainty really, the definition of it is a situation which involves imperfect or unknown information. So, you know, people say if you had a crystal ball, you could forecast what the future is, but none of us are privy to that. So I think
that's absolutely true. I mean, fortune telling, none of us are fortune tellers. None of us know the future with 100% certainty. And we talk a lot about how to deal with that on this show, and we're gonna dive down a lot deeper into it, into dealing with uncertainty on this show, on this episode. But I wanted to start with some insight from a very famous comedian, George Carlin, because I think he was very prolific. He loved words, and he loved to make people think about what words mean, and I think we do that a lot on our show. George Carlin said, "Tell people there's an invisible man in the sky who's created the universe, and the vast majority will believe you. Tell them that the paint is wet on their bus bench, and they have to touch it to be sure." And I, I'm not poking fun at religion or anything. I think it's pertinent because certainty and uncertainty really involves both thought as well as action. You know, it's not just a belief. It's also taking action based on that belief. It also involves power, such as think about leadership within your business or your boss. Think of your boss and the decision-making skills that they have. They're able to do that because they're more certain of their belief that, you know, something is right or wrong. It doesn't mean that they're right or wrong. It just means that their perception is the perception that they believe.
Or they instill the perception into us by making them believe that they are decisive by taking, you know, because if they look uncertain, then we're going to lose our confidence in them, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So much of it is perception and how people deal with it. And I think that it's a bit misleading because for a lot of people, they look at, you know, they look at what they see and they don't really look much deeper than that, what they see on the surface. But, you know, if you look a lot deeper within, say, even your boss, you don't know what he's feeling inside, he or she. They could be very nervous about the decision. It could be keeping them up at night. But if other people in the business perceive some type of jittery emotions over a decision or an unsureness, that's really going to look bad on them, and it's going to weaken their authority and their leadership within that particular company. So,
you know, and we don't normally see what happens behind closed doors, and probably those questions that they are asking of themselves and others. You know, is this the right thing to do? I know when I was younger, and, you know, we talk a lot about our fathers on this podcast, and I always thought my dad was the most decisive, you know, smart man there was. I mean, he knew exactly what to do in any given moment. But I remember he had bought a business. This was pretty much like his retirement business. He bought a coin laundry, and he was trying to decide if he was going to keep it open 24 hours or keep it just a regular 9 to 5, you know, kind of establishment. and he was up nights and worrying about it. And it was like probably the first time I really saw my dad like really stressing out over the decision. And finally I was like, Dad, just take a chance. Let it go for 24 hours and let's see how it rides. There's no competition in our area, and it ended up being a success. But when you see someone that is in that leadership role question, and you're not used to doing that, you kind of do. You're like, wow, is this my dad? He always seems like he's on top of things, especially when it came to business.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because we all think our dads. I mean, most of us, I guess, realize we think of our dads as being perfect, and our parents, we generally think of them as being parents, not necessarily people, but they're your parents, and they can do no wrong. They know everything. But as you get older, you begin to realize that they are just people, and they're doing the best job that they possibly can. They're not always going to be right all the time. Your boss is not going to be right all the time. Authority figures, people that you look up to, they're not going to be right all the time. They might, you might not see them as being nervous or putting even a lot of thought into a decision. Maybe it seems kind of instant or spontaneous to you, but you don't know what's going on in their heads, and you don't know their feelings, and you're not in their shoes, in their place. So, how do you know? How do you know? And I think that no one is perfect. We talk a lot about this on this show, that you have to make a decision, move forward, and sometimes you're going to fall down, and we all do that. And what really determines if you're a winner or a loser in this is how you get up and what you learn from that experience. But it's so much of a feeling, I think, too, as much as a feeling of uncertainty or certainty. And I think that kind of reinforces another thing we've been saying on this show, and that is about knowing yourself and using emotions as a tool. If you're feeling uncertain about something, you should be asking yourself why. And are you being a fortune teller? Are you trying to look into some type of crystal ball and tell the future? Because if you are, you need to stop it, because we can't read the future.
I think it's very important to trust your intuition. If your radar is going off about something, to ask yourself that question, why am I feeling this way? And see if there's any true valid reason that you're feeling these emotions.
Yeah, and that comes with age, I think. You begin to trust yourself as you make more decisions based on your gut. I trust my gut, and with my gut decisions, my gut feelings, and all these other things dealing with my gut, you'd think I'd have a six-pack, because I try to work my gut as much as I can, but no six-pack.
Yeah, I've been working my gut real good.
I'm sure a lot of people work their guts real good. But so going back to what George Carlin said, what made me kind of make me question is, why is it that so many people buy into the certainty of these conventional beliefs and thoughts? Now, George Carlin, of course, he's talking about religion, but I think it goes way beyond religion. Think of some of the social or conventional beliefs we've talked about on earlier episodes, like working 9 to 5, or following a certain life path to where, you grow up, you go to school, you grow up, you get married, you have kids, you move out into the suburbs, you have a good job, all that, following a certain order and doing these things that society says that we need to do.
Well, think about it. When we're a child, right? You ask all kinds of questions. Why? Why is the sky blue? Why is the cat furry, or whatever it might be, right?
Why does my great aunt have wrinkles?
Right.
I get in so much trouble over that.
So The thing is that somewhere along the line, they stop telling us to stop asking why, and they start saying that's just the way it is. Don't ask the questions. It's just the way it is. The boss wants it this way. That's the way it is. And we get so used to as an adult that they're saying, oh, whatever will be, will be. It's just like, okay, well, there's nothing we can do to make a change.
Right. Now, you were, I think you were spot on with something that you just said there, is that, when we're kids, we ask a lot of questions, but as we get older, it gets drilled into us that we shouldn't be asking questions. We keep being told not to ask so many questions. I mean, I know that happens quite frequently with kids, especially if you have a really inquisitive child. It's really easy to say, please stop. Stop. You're just asking them about everything. Or you develop some very good skills at answering questions. And what I try to do is I answer a question with another question and try to make them think of it too. But so there are 4 levels. I know that we've talked about uncertainty, but really certainty and uncertainty are just the opposites of each other. So I have a list of 4 levers of certainty, and it comes through a Harvard Business Review article.
All right, let's hear it.
From 2015. It's called "How Certainty Transforms Persuasion."
Hey, I had that app, by the way, and it's a great app, man. They have like some of the best stories.
Harvard Business Review.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I read a lot of Harvard Business Review articles in graduate school. It is excellent. So 4 levers of certainty. One is consensus, and the way I think about consensus is, social validation. It's talking to other people, asking those questions, and learning from others what they have done, or trying to become more certain about something. Try to learn something. Try to educate yourself. Second lever is repetition, and that comes through marketers do it through repeating their message. If you notice, some speakers, they say the same thing over and over and over and over again, maybe in slightly different ways, but they're repeating the same message because they're very certain about it. And I know that you'll relate to repetition as well, Tom, because of practice. Practice is a lever, or it's a.
Bruce Lee used to say, "I don't fear the man that has 20,000 different techniques. I fear the man that's practiced one kick 20,000 times."
Yeah. So as I go through these levers, just recognize just these 2 levers. They can work for you or they can work against you. Such as, if you're in high school band, we had a high school band director, Mr. Parsons, and Mr. Parsons used to tell us all the time, he said, practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And what he meant by that is he said, if you keep just the act of practicing doesn't do it. You have to pay attention to what you're practicing and how you're practicing, all the different ins and outs. Because if you're playing the wrong note, you're going to continue, and you're practicing that, and you're playing the same note in practice, you're going to be playing the wrong note when it comes to your performance. And I think that sometimes we repeat things in our heads, like negative self-talk, self-doubt. We tell ourselves things over and over that we're not good, we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not thin enough, we're not rich enough, all these different things that we're not. And we repeat them to ourselves, and it becomes a very strong message that we become very certain of.
It's like this own little movie that's generating in your mind that you play over and over and over. And if you watch it enough times, you believe it.
Yeah. And, with that being said, that can also work to your advantage. If you can what did they say? Play it
I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me.
Yeah, that was going to Stewart Smiley. But I get, but it's absolutely true though. If you stand in front of the mirror and you keep telling yourself and giving yourself positive reinforcement, you will, as long as you keep doing that, you will make changes. You will feel better, but you will know that you are worthy. um, Same thing with consensus and social validation. We generally tend to hang around people that are think a lot alike us. So uh, you're going to be getting if you're getting validation from a certain type of person. But so you should try to expand that social validation. People outside of your social group, maybe people that don't necessarily share the same thoughts and ideals. You can learn from.
And we've talked about that. We have past episodes talking about hanging with your homies and how the people that are around you actually influence who you become. And, how you have different friends like when you're in childhood, and then you have different friends when you're in high school and in college. And then when you get married and you associate and you kind of, some people get stuck. I've seen a lot of people get stuck back in that high school time where they hang around people that might not make the best decisions in life, and they never progress. And it is constantly in this cycle of, losing jobs and bad relationships and just bad stuff because they associate with people that are not helping them and promoting them.
Yeah, we talked about this too in the laws of power, dealing with toxic people. And there are people who have chronically bad luck. It's like they bring bad luck upon themselves. And you can't help these people. They are the only people who can help themselves. And if they're dragging you down, that's not a good thing. And it's one thing to be helpful to people, but you can't let yourself be drowned in the process.
It's like Ziggy and Eeyore, right? Ziggy, the cartoon character, everything was always and Charlie Brown, nothing goes their way. And Eeyore was always complaining, which is another toxic kind of person to be around.
Eeyore was kind of a downer.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I've known some Eeyores.
So the third lever is ease. And if you think about this, the more if I ask you what your favorite drink is, you could probably just tell me just off the top of your head, not give it much thought, right? I mean, there was a time in your life when
I gave up my favorite drink. It was Diet Coke, but I after years of consuming it, I gave it up. Now it's water, cold water.
Okay, but I could tell you were hesitant when you said that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're referring to a drink or if you're talking about a beer. I used to like Sam Adams.
The more easily something comes to mind, the more certain you are of it. So, if someone asks you if you like a certain food, generally you can say yes or no within like a split second. But if you
Chinese food,
I remember back when we first started the show, we used to ask ourselves, well, what's the show about? And it wasn't very easy, was it?
No, we really had a hard time defining it.
Yeah, because we weren't certain about, what we wanted to do. And we talk about such broad topics, it wasn't very easy to really filter that down and define it in a very specific way. Glad we got over that. And then the fourth, is defense. And that is if you believe in something so much that you're willing to fight for it, you're willing to defend it, that should be a pretty good indication of that you're certain about how you feel or uncertain. But those are the four levers. And as I mentioned, it comes through a Harvard Business Review article that was written back in 2015.
Here's some other tips, John, that just like I was just thinking about it and I was reviewing some of my, I was doing some of my own show prep, but nothing specific. But I in the clarity, it was coming that it was, you wanted to really decide if there really is a decision to be made. Sometimes people feel uncertain about something and there's really nothing there, So you got to clearly identify what decision to be made and maybe investigate to the best of your ability and then surrender whatever comes your way. So, if you decide to leave your job, my wife here recently had an option to go to another career. And, it was better pay and she ended up making the leap, but it was agony for her for a while trying to decide, I'm comfortable, I'm making a good salary. And, but the thing is I don't know how stable this job is. There's no certainty, right? And this other job might make me, work extra hours at night or what have you. But she had faith and she took the leap and better things came to her because of doing that.
Yes. Yeah. I can remember back when I was back in my younger years and I was trying to figure things out. What I did is I guess I'm going to sound really nerdy here, but if you listen to this show, I'm nerdy, so I guess I'll just be proud of it. But I used to do a SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. And basically, if I was uncertain about like a decision to make or uncertain which way to head, what I would do is I would outline different situations. I would think of different situations that could occur. Like for instance, if you're dealing with your job, you have some options here. You could stay with the devil that or you could go somewhere else and do something different. And there are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats involved in any decision. So what I would do is I would just list it out. Okay, what's so good about staying in my current job? Okay, what's so great about doing something new? You could do it in any order that you really want. It's kind of a brain dump or a brainstorming exercise. Kind of get those thoughts out of your head and get them organized so that once you do that and get it organized, most of the time the decision that you need to make is very clear cut, because you realize there are some things that you can live with, and there are other things that there are going to be things that you're certain about and other things that you're not certain about, just in your own analysis of what's going on.
Uncertainty, it really comes down to many decisions that we make in our life, right? Some of the common ones, like we've talked about, is job or career path. Also, whether I should leave a relationship or stay in a relationship.
Right.
Should we have children? That's a big what if for a lot of people. Even making a purchase, should I buy a new car or a used car? And the SWOT analysis that John's talking about can help you lay down the foundation to at least get that out of your head onto paper and do something constructive with it. John, when I was in the Air Force, I went through this, and the same thing when I was talking about my wife getting a new job. I had a career path to choose. I had done my 4 years and it was time to re-enlist, and I was tempted with a heavy bonus because they had invested a lot of money into my training and they didn't want to lose that. But at the same time, I had done radio before I went into the Air Force, and I did radio on the side when I was there, but I really felt a calling to be creative again. And I wanted to take a chance and go back to that. And I remember sitting and I was finishing up school while I was in the Air Force, and we covered Robert Frost's The Road Less Taken, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a poem, and the main thing was two roads diverged in a road, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. And that, I think, was that was my SWOT analysis. That was, I'm going to take something different, because the Air Force was straight and narrow. I could see where I was going to go, probably even have an idea of when I was getting promoted, how much money I was going to make at a certain time. I could do 20 years, retire. It was kind of a safe route, even though it was a dangerous job and an honorable one, but it wasn't, I didn't feel it was really me. I'd signed up,
Yeah.
I served my country, and I did the right thing. But as far as making a career out of it, I wasn't so sure. I had a 3-year-old girl that I barely saw because I was gone on my plane all the time, and I was just like, you know what? I want to follow, I only get one life. I want to follow what is important to me. And I did. I went into radio. I've worked in radio for 25 years now. That including some of the time that I was in the Air Force. But and I'm happy, and it's leading me down different paths. And even now, I still ask, is this where I want to go? And it's taken me into TV and some other opportunities that are heading this way. But that one poem was the one that made me change my mind about everything.
Yeah. I read The Road Less Traveled by Dr. Scott Peck, I believe his name is. A great, fantastic book, and that was one of the first books I read when I got involved in self-help, and it was a life-changing book for me. And I'm sure that a lot of it was based on the Robert Frost poem.
Oh,
but
absolutely, I'm sure.
yeah, it's you know, I'm glad to hear that, because what you just explained was basically the exercise that you went through. And when people are feeling uncertain about something, like you said, Tom, you need to first ask yourself what you're really uncertain about, and try to figure out if this is a decision. And if it is a decision, is it your decision to make? Is this within your span of control? But really think long and hard about the different opportunities, whether you want to pursue them or not. I think just being open to the possibilities can help you a lot, because even with possibilities, certainty and uncertainty comes in to the picture. Excuse me. Because all things are, they teach you as a kid that, all things are possible. But as you realize when you get older, not everything is possible that you can think of.
Right. And so we do have to learn that we have to accept that things are out of our control sometimes.
Right.
And we have no control. I mean, we have some direction. We can point to which way we're going to go, but no one can control the future or what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We don't know. There's so many variables. It's time is like fluid, if time exists, but it is fluid and it's always changing. It's chaos.
Well, it is chaos. And you should expect that to be that way. But also you shouldn't be setting yourself up for chaos. Now I'll use finances as an example for this, because I think it's something that all of us have done from one time or the other. So you have a big bill coming up. You don't really have the money in your bank account yet, but maybe you sold something on eBay. Maybe you put something on Craigslist, or your friend's going to get that you borrowed money. They're going to give you money back. Maybe you borrowed money from your mom. Whatever it is, you don't have the money in hand. You know you're going to get it. You just don't know when. And what do? You don't want to be late with the payment, so you send a check in. So you don't have money in your account to back it up. But there's great certainty that check is going to bounce if you don't get money in your account by a certain time. To me, that's setting yourself up for failure. And there's that old cliche that says, don't count your chickens before they hatch. And so don't write a check before you have money in the bank, because you are going to put yourself through so much stress over that, thinking about, is this going to happen, and everything's going to collapse, and I'm going to have all these fees thrown into my account and all this, and you're just going to be digging a huge hole for yourself to do that. So, think about your actions and the timing of your actions, and what you're setting yourself up for, as far as what you're putting at risk through taking those actions. And speaking of risk, remember that we always tend to think of things in extremes. It's pretty common that we, as humans, think of extreme situations. So we think of the best possible situation. We also think of the worst possible situation. Reality is going to include really kind of a combination of both good and bad, and they very rarely are at the extremes. If you're an extreme thinker, that's going to be very hard to kind of reel yourself back in. But it's a good thing to ask yourself, is this, how likely is this to happen? How certain is it that something is going to happen? And how certain is what you think is going to happen, or what's going to come out of that? How possible is that? I mean, the world is just full of uncertainties and questions. It's full of questions that you can ask yourself as well as ask others, even if you get to a point of they say, stop asking questions.
So here's another tidbit on uncertainty. Sometimes it's not always about making a decision. Sometimes here's something that happened to me last week, John, and I haven't even talked to you about this. So my mom had decided to get a new cat. Right. She had just put to sleep her cat that she had for 16 years not long ago. She's real lonely. But before she got her cat, she wanted to clean the carpets. So, it was a nice fresh start for the new cat. Right. So she hired a company to come in and clean the carpets. What's that?
Some new fresh carpet for the cat to piss on?
Yeah, exactly. So it didn't come in and pee where the other one was peeing. So, yeah, and it probably, I don't know how, if carpet cleaning can even get rid of that for cats, but anyways, so she had her carpets cleaned, and but she thinks that the people, she's uncertain. Well, she says she's certain, that the guys that cleaned her carpet also stole $300 from her. She had some cash in a drawer that was right where they were cleaning. It was in a common area, and it was some money I'd given her for picking up my son from school and bringing him back and forth and watching him, and for gas money. And so she had put it in a drawer. She had cash, because I used to just give her checks, but she said she doesn't want to, have to go to the bank. So I was, all right, I'll give you cash. So she called me at midnight. She was like, Tom, did you borrow money? I'm like, no. And she's like, I'm missing my money. Right. And I'm saying, what? So I'm like, Mom, just, double check out the drawers. Maybe it fell behind, maybe, whatever. Right. I don't think anyone has taken your money, because she was first thinking all the people that have been in my house are these two carpet cleaners. So she checks, she stays up 3:30 in the morning, takes out everything in the drawers, opens up, she can't find it. Now I'm uncertain if she had the money there to begin with, maybe, Mom's getting up there, maybe she put it somewhere else and forgot, but in her mind, she's certain she had it there. And she also said that she was sitting there as one of the guys kept on talking to her and telling her to sit down and relax, and her back was turned to the living room where this guy was working, right? Okay. So they could have been working in tandem where they stole the money, but I told my mom, I said, look, there's nothing you can do. If I called the company, we got no evidence. We don't have a video footage of the guy going through her drawers, to find the money. So it's just speculation. So we had to let it go, but things work out. I took her to the bank the next day because she wanted to, make sure that whatever money she had was in the bank. And when we found out she had reward points, and her reward points almost covered the amount that she had taken from her. So I was like, look, it all worked out, but that was uncertainty of accusing someone of something that they might not have done.
Yeah. And remember, this is uncertainty is not only the actions that you take, but what you think. And we, that's what prejudice is, isn't it?
It's fear.
It's jumping to conclusions, but not really knowing all the facts. But I understand what you're saying about what your mom was going through. I go through the same thing with my mom too. And she does not like having people come in the house, and she's always been like that. And for some reason, that kind of stuff always happens to her. And sometimes she'll find it later.
Yeah. Now I hope that's the case, But then again, I do live in South Florida,
Yeah,
and I
no.
do not rule out that at one at all.
Yeah, and I know, and I hear about those things too from my mom about all the, the criminal activity.
In fact, Miami was got voted the worst city to live in the United States, which I don't know if it's actually the worst, but they're based on I guess poverty and prices of houses and traffic and so forth. It's
Tropical
on.
drink, prices of tropical drinks.
Yeah. It's such a, I mean, there's so many wealthy people and then there's so many poor people. So it's hard to balance out and saying whether that's, the worst place to live in America. Obviously, yeah, the crime is really bad. But we have beautiful beaches.
That's true. Um, okay. So I think I've
How about taking accountability for when you do make a decision, John? We speak a lot about accountability.
Well, that's true. When you make a decision, you have to be accountable for your actions, and you know that I guess that's built into the equation. For making any type of decision, recognizing that you can make a mistake, and that you have to stand up. You might get knocked down, but you have to pick yourself back up, dust yourself off, and keep moving forward, learning from that experience.
Probably the one other thing, at least I have to say, is just as I was telling you that story about making assumptions. Same thing. If you have like bad things, your car's breaking down, you owe money, everything bad is happening. It seems like it's happening to you. You have a cloud that's following you, and I know you've talked about there's some people like that, but really the universe, it's not conspiring against you. It's coincidence, and because there's also times you don't notice it when all the good things are happening. You're just kind of like, yeah, everything's cool, but you tend to notice when things are bad and multiple things compound on top of each other. You think that someone has it out for you. It's not. It's just life. It's just the way it is. See, there's it's just the way it is quote.
No, it's interesting that you say that. I always think back about one of those low time in my life where I was getting over mono and everything in the house was starting to break. My daughter set the microwave on fire and my dishwasher wasn't working, and then all of a sudden my refrigerator wasn't working, and it did seem like the world was conspiring against me, and I couldn't do anything wrong. It does deal with certainty, because the way we deal with the world, we have certain ways that we act, we have certain ways that we think, certain ways, certain things that we do, and why those events, all those bad things that happen throw you so hard is because you can no longer depend on what you thought was certain before. I think that's when the bad things that happen in your life really hit hard, because you cannot handle them as you used to. It's an opportunity to get creative and to solve a problem. The reason why it was so upsetting to me is when all these things were breaking down, I had no money whatsoever to take care of problems, and I was used to throwing money at problems. Oh, the refrigerator's is it's broken. Well, it's old. It needs to be replaced. I just go out and buy a new refrigerator. I buy a new microwave. I throw money at the problem to solve the problem, and you can't. I learned that you can't do that. You can't solve all of your problems with money. And I had to get creative, and I learned a great deal from that. I learned to start asking questions and finding other paths that I could take through getting those questions answered. Just doing some research on your own. And then also making decisions too, as far as just some things you just got to let it go.
Yeah, I definitely believed in letting go. I mean, if you look at if you were like a Buddhist, you would not hold on. You'd live in the present moment, and you would not attach yourself to the uncertainty. You would accept it. You'd almost be like, The world would be really boring, John, if we knew our full story. If it was like Star Wars and we knew we were going to blow up the Death Star and, kill our evil father and right before right after we redeem him, it would be very boring. That uncertainty is what gives us excitement and what creates life and wonder. I mean, it's a good thing to feel that way.
Yeah.
But if you're scared, if you let the fear overwhelm you, have faith. Faith, whether it's your invisible man in the sky, God, or whoever it might be that to help you through, or faith even in yourself and what you're doing and why you're doing what you do. And have a faith. Don't let the devil whisper in your ear and make you doubt yourself, because that is what will cause you to be uncertain. That will cause you to have fear and anxiety. And it's just a downhill slope from there, man.
Yeah, it is a lot about your mindset and what you believe. If you're certain that you're going to succeed, you're going to keep pushing and keep doing whatever you have to do to make that happen. If you're not certain of yourself, not certain of what you're doing or where you're headed, you're going to be flip-flopping around. I love the Beatles. And I love the song Let It Be. And I understand what you were just saying, too, about Buddhists and different philosophies of life, basically, about, oh, don't worry about it. Let it be. But if you're trying to change your life, you're going to piss some people off. You're going to change. You could do things that you're kind of poking the sleeping bear. You are going to cause problems for yourself. And that is part of your journey, that you have to learn how to handle those challenges. And you're trying to push yourself forward and kind of change things for yourself. That's just the opposite to me of letting it be. I think there are times to let it be. And those are the times where you have very little control over the decision, or that decision is not yours to make. Those things you need to be able to let go and let it be. So it is really an art form to figure that out sometimes and know when to not let it be.
You must choose wisely.
Yeah.
Isn't that Dos Equis beer? Is that the guy with the deep voice and talks about choosing your beer? The most interesting man in the world?
Yes. Didn't he like leave and go off to Mars on his last or something?
I think they're not using him anymore. I think they're done with that campaign, but it was a great campaign.
His contract options were not interesting enough, I guess.
That I think about wraps it up, John. Do you have anything else to say?
No. I'm certain that we've wrapped this up.
Thanks for listening. I'm Tom Stewart, joined with John Curren, and check us out at swiftkickinatheass.com. Make sure you sign up for our membership site. There you'll get free courses, all kinds of goodies that we'll throw in there in the future. We are adding to that. There's some courses, there's some books, there's John's simple spending plan. And
we also have the SWOT tool.
Yeah, the SWOT analysis is in there, so you could be certain you can take care of your problems. Thanks for listening. Peace.
Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.